When you think about meal kit companies, what do you see? Probably long, complicated recipes and subscriptions you can't escape. But with the new Blue Apron, we're doing meal delivery differently. No subscription needed. Faster, easier meals. And the same dedication to quality we've always had. Shop 100+ meals at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first 2 orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
This time last year, Paul, United went away to Real Madrid and got a very creditable 1-1 draw, Danny Welbeck scoring, and many of us were talking about beating Real Madrid and going to the latter stages of European competition. Not quite sure we're going to do that this time round.
Now, all I've got to say about that is Welbs is that guy.
Welbs is that guy. He wasn't that guy in Athens, though, was he?
He was better than the rest of them in Athens. Before we get into the fun times that was the Olympiakos game, since we last recorded a podcast, something rather wonderful's happened. Not something that's happened for a very long time, but, you know, it did happen. We won a football game. We played another team, right, at football, and in the end, it was our team that won the match.
It's amazing. Some people tell me that sometimes Manchester United win football matches.
It seems a far-fetched nonsense, but it is in fact the case.
In fact, there were more remarkable things about this game. Not only did Manchester United win a football match, but they did it by not playing kick and rush football. Quite amazing, I tell you.
Yeah, the front four, the Fab Four was together. Mata, Januzaj, Robin Van Persie and Wayne Rooney all started, and it took them a while to get going, but in the end, they were instrumental, and it was not a flat 4-4-2, it was not hoofball, it was not get it out wide and stick it in, son. Goals came from very elegantly worked move, which Patrice Evra won the penalty from, which Van Persie dispatched with confidence and aplomb, and then some hilariously shambolic Crystal Palace defending left Wayne Rooney, well, basically that was clearly in his contract as well, must be given 12 yards of space to hit magical volleys.
Yeah, well, an absolutely fantastic finish from Rooney, I suppose, to celebrate his ridiculous new contract. I guess the really interesting part about that game was not just that United won and kept a clean sheet, but of course that with Januzaj and Massa in the team, both players who are nominally out wide but both came centrally, meant that United had much more balanced spread of play. So it's one of those awful statistics, but the percentage of football played in each third of the pitch, so left, right, and in the centre was almost totally balanced in that game against Crystal Palace. You know, United used the pitch very well in a way that for much of the season United haven't used the pitch very well. For much of the time we're confined to very narrow areas on the left and right wing, and the pattern of passing with United is very predictable. It's always cross field or get it wide and then get it in, and a lot of long balls aimlessly pumped into the box, and it wasn't quite like that against Crystal Palace. That said, I don't want to go crazy with the praise here because it wasn't a superb performance by any means. There were many positives. Fine goal from Wayne Rooney. Decent performance from Marouane Fellaini returning in central midfield. At least he was neat in that role, if not very dynamic. Although I'm not sure we can ever really expect dynamism from him. Van Persie, as you said, scored his goal, and Massa and Januzaj were decent. Not their best games, either of them there. And United were actually reasonably secure at the back too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of that's down to Palace. Yeah, perfectly functional, reasonable United performance. The first half very flat, and kind of really the only praise really reserved for Fellaini, who was fine. I think he was about equivalent to what Tom Cleverley did against Arsenal, right? It was a pretty good midfield performance, but that from us looks like this kind of weird thing from a distant land that has a certain magical beauty that we wouldn't normally expect it to. Rooney's volley was good. Van Persie looked sharper, and there were some promising signs, but I don't know whether I can really hold my tongue any longer talking about the Palace game, and unless there's anything else you've got burning to say about that.
Look, so yeah, no, that's fine, but we can get onto the real meat of the conversation, of course, but, you know, a few positives there, I thought, you know, distribution played better, the fact that Mata and Januzaj were both in the side. How many occasions has Moyes played a couple of playmakers like that? Not many, if ever. Wayne Rooney dropping deep. His pass success rate was above 90%. That's really not happened at all this season. Lots and lots of possession. Created a lot of chances, not too many shots on target, and that's been a problem all season too. So lots and lots of positives, kind of in the aggregate. I don't think it was a vintage performance by any means, and in fact Palace created some chances with the possession they had, and I suppose on a different day it could have been a much more difficult occasion for United if Palace had taken the few chances that they'd got. But in the end, very valuable 3 points. I thought some fans and David Moyes went over the top in declaring this a brand new dawn, because if the season's told us anything, it's that a victory is not the start of something new. It's the exception that proves the rule that United have been the 6th, 7th or 8th best team in the league this season.
More false dawns than a cosplay convention in honour of the UK version of The Office this season. That was pretty convoluted.
You might want to work on the delivery there. Just thinking when you're going for your stand-up routines, maybe, bit sharper timings.
It's been a really long day, as it has been for David Moyes, no doubt. Yeah, it was nice to get the win. There's a couple of interesting things in terms of the selection. Playing Fellaini and Januzaj, and the fact that United looked so much more effective playing those players. I mean, I was really shocked when Januzaj wasn't even on the bench for the Olympiakos game, and he'd clearly been picked for the Palace game with a very different plan in mind for Olympiakos. But it does seem an odd one to have prioritised the Premier League, given that all meaningful achievement in the Premier League is impossible, right? The only thing we're playing for is a Europa League place.
Yes, and the pattern of play against Olympiakos was very, very different. So a lot more time. I mean, a lot of possession of the ball still, United, up to 60% depending on the methodology used. Of course, I've talked about this before, haven't I? There are two ways of counting possession. One is the actual time you have the ball, and the other is the number of passes, and you just create a ratio and split the time played by that ratio. Anyway, so between 53 and 60% possession, depending on which system you use. So a lot of possession for United, but all distributed out wide and pretty ineffective with the ball as a result, and very careless in possession at times. Didn't create that many chances. Those chances created were wasted. One shot on target, one save from the goalkeeper, and looked pretty pathetic at the back. And it's a really, really weird tactical decision to play slow defenders in the centre of defence, which United ended up playing very, very deep. And I didn't think that was really by design, although the kind of generally cautious approach was most certainly by design. But the consequence of United playing deep meant that there's this huge gap between United's midfield and forwards, as there have been so many occasions this season that it just reduced United to banging it long. I mean, it's pretty agricultural at times.
Yeah, a bunch of interesting stuff in the data from the Olympiakos game. I know people hate it when you start talking about data, but I've always liked statistics and information. I've always found it kind of fascinating, and the thing that was clear yesterday is that it really backed up what you saw and the kind of impulse, because if you look at Carrick and Cleverley's heat maps from that game, they are absolutely, they're rammed in United's own half. They're hardly getting forward at all, and as you say, the gap was enormous, and those long passes constantly give the ball away. If you look at the pass map of long passes in the Olympiakos game, the green lines are all the ones going across the pitch, and the red lines are all the ones going up the pitch. It was a horribly inefficient strategy. And when you see your two central midfielders with a heat map that shows them sitting really deep, you expect that what that means is the other team has had loads of the ball and you've been up against it and under the cosh and all that. But as you say, United had tons of possession in that game, and it all started from playing Ferdinand and Vidic, which he kind of had to do through injury, sort of, but it made the whole tactical plan redundant, because when you have that much of a gap, I mean, Januzaj would have made a huge difference in that game because he would have been able to link up the two.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, lots and lots of injuries. Raphael, Jones and Evans all injured at the moment. Of course, he got rid of Fabio, which means he doesn't have another option at right back other than playing a centre back out there. So Smalling, a lot more mobile than Vidic and Ferdinand these days, not as good in possession, of course, but that might have been a better option if we'd had another option at right back. We don't. So he was forced into the selection, but it had a significant impact on United's style of play. But I think the thing that had the bigger impact was the fact that he picked Young and Valencia over Januzaj, at least Mata being cup-tied, and it completely changed the way United played. And of course there was a plan there, right? So, I'm not suggesting that necessarily the direct cause and effect correlation between playing two wide players and playing that style. United clearly wanted to play that style. That's why Moyes picked those players. And a little antithetical, isn't it? It's kind of weird that in Europe we'd play this kind of weird British style, and at Palace we'd try and keep the ball a bit more.
What's interesting is last week on the podcast we had Sleepy Nick on, and he was talking about how Olympiakos are really strong in the centre of midfield. And I think if Moyes was going to play a really defensive agricultural style, he would have been way better served to put Carrick, Cleverley and Fellaini all in there together, because then it would have been horrible to watch. But that's what he did against Shakhtar. And then the problem is, though, you can't play Rooney wide left anymore. We don't live in a world where it's okay to play Rooney wide left.
No, Rooney wouldn't have picked himself there for sure. So look, and while we're on Rooney, he had a stinker. Right, alongside quite a number of other players, so I'm not just picking on him, but he had a stinker. Not effective at all. Neither, I have to say, was Valencia or Van Persie or Cleverley or Carrick or Ferdinand. Oof, ouch. Just so many players had very, very poor games. Had very little impact on the game. Look at the raw statistics. It looks like United had loads of possession and therefore, in some sense, dominated the game. It couldn't be further from the truth. The tempo was set and dictated by Olympiakos. They were the side that were dangerous. They were the side that looked like they were winning, and they did, And afterwards, Moyes moaned about the deflection for the first goal. He did, of course, say, I take responsibility for this. Not by handing in his resignation, I might add, but just by saying, I take responsibility for it. The players are hurting. But, it's United's problems were all of United's own making, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I didn't see a quote from him bemoaning the deflection, I have to say, which is a good job, because that would have upset me because it wasn't a deflection.
I didn't see where this was coming from, he said, in terms of United's performance, and we've been playing well, we're in good form. There was another cry, it was a cracking one.
So I saw that one. That's brilliant. It's like, we're in good form. You mean we've won one game and previous to that we were in absolutely abysmal form? How he still got a job? Well, of course we know how he's still got a job. He's very lucky to have got the Man United job. Firstly, because he's very lucky to have got the Man United job because he's clearly vastly unqualified for it. But second, it's lucky that it's Manchester United job that he's lucked into, because he's going to get to keep it much longer than he would keep any other equivalent job that he'd fluked his way into by being mates with the previous manager.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Moyes down to evens to get the sack on some betting exchanges at the moment, which is interesting. A lot of money flowing in that direction, of course, at the moment. So, the other thing is there's some difficult games coming up. United playing West Brom. Pepe Mel's under a lot of pressure there, so who knows what that will turn out to be in terms of a performance in a couple of weeks' time. But then there's this run of games which include a game against Liverpool and Manchester City and Olympiakos and West Ham in this 2-week period. I can't say I'm looking forward to that with any confidence at all. United could well get battered by Liverpool and City. On current form, they might well do.
And that's just an ugly thought, isn't it? Right, to go back to the Olympiakos game, you're absolutely right to single out Wayne Rooney, to be honest, even though, everyone was terrible, but Rooney was specifically and particularly terrible. 1 shot on goal, which was blocked, 0 key passes, 2 out of 7 successful tackles, just awful, a very ineffective performance. There's been a lot touted about how he's going to be a leader at United as part of his new contract, which, by the way, we've not recorded a podcast since that was signed and sealed, so let's have a little chat about that, shall we? Lots of counter-briefing going on, an interesting piece in the Times suggesting that actually he's not really on £300,000 a week. He's on a similar wage to what he was on before, but has access to United's commercial team to add money to his weekly wage, basically, which that's kind of an interesting deal. And the piece in the Times speculated that might be something that happens more in the future, versus being on £300,000 a week flat wage. The wage is the least of my problems with that contract. Really, my problem with it is just that it's a really substantial wage for a player of his age and fitness profile and temperament and form profile for 5 years, right?
Right. Yes, there's another analysis of his wage, which is, in fact, it's significantly higher than United are briefing, so I've heard. So believe whom you like on that one, but it could well be substantially higher than £300,000 a week. And, you know, the reason why it's very high, whatever the number is that United were desperate. They were desperate not to look weak. They were desperate to hold on to one of their better players, where how good he is relative to the best players in the world is an interesting argument at the moment, I think. And so he's managed to leverage that situation to his own end, just in the way he leveraged United's position in 2010 to get a new contract. You know, it's very smart from his management team. Is it a good deal for United? Well, you know, part of me thinks not only do I think that his performances will degrade substantially, because I do not believe he'll be able to keep up the physical side of his game. He has not looked after his body, and I think he'll be getting more injuries and be slowing down. I think that burst of speed has already gone. He very rarely beats a man these days. It happens occasionally, but not very often. And I think 5.5 years for that type of player is going to look like a very bad deal in 3 years' time or so. That's just a prediction. We'll see. And of course, he might not even get that far, because as soon as something happens that he doesn't like, he's going to throw his toys out of the pram again, because that's what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand the counter-arguments to this, and I don't mean the Wayne Rooney's brilliant, he's been the only good player this season, we should pay him loads. The one that gets me is we'd be a lot worse off, we'd be in a much worse position this season if it wasn't for Wayne Rooney, which I think that is a crazy argument, because one player performing well in a terrible team quite often is the problem, let alone anything else. We'd be a completely different side without Wayne Rooney. David Moyes' energies would have been used in a completely different way without Wayne Rooney. We live in a universe of infinite complexity. It is not definitive to say that we would have been worse off if we'd lost him.
Well, yes, and I don't think he's even been playing that well since the turn of the year, frankly.
That's the other thing. But, so I'm not just talking about the counter-argument of the people that love Wayne Rooney, although that's totally fair enough too. The thing that I'm talking about is, okay, it would cost a fortune to replace him. That is accurate. To buy a striker of his quality would be an expensive business. He has a commercial value to United that's unparalleled by any of the rest of his colleagues. You know, he is the player who everyone in the world knows who he is, you know, in a different way to anyone else that's left at United, basically. So I get that.
Yeah.
No?
I have to say, I don't always buy that argument. I think United's profile drives the players' profiles, and it's unique in the football world that happens. Right. So Wayne Rooney would not have the same profile that he's got now if he wasn't at United. He's been given a platform. Sure, there's a relationship between star players and commercial revenue in some markets, particularly in Asia. But he is a star, quote unquote, because he's at United and he's got that big platform. I'm quite sure that if United bought a very good player, you know, maybe a younger player who was about to come into his prime, that they could have fashioned another star from that player too. You know, after all, they are in control of the marketing here, and you know, I think I'm not sure I buy that argument really at all, that he's driving United's marketing machine. I think they, as a club, leveraged the players, sure, but he's had that platform and he's used it very successfully. So, you know, that's one argument anyway. So I think the bigger argument is it good value for money, right? £85 million. That's a hell of a lot to pay for, you know, maybe we get another 2 good seasons out of him. And really, we're going to need a lot more than that in order to justify it. Maybe it'll surprise everyone, but I don't think so.
To a certain extent, like, the PR spin works on me. I'm quite vulnerable to, like, oh yeah, look, here's a bunch of pictures of him when he was brilliant, you know, and so exciting. And yeah, maybe age 28 he's going to kind of mature and develop into a new sort of player, and it'll be really exciting to watch. But really, when I think about it, I'm very cynical about whether this is going to work out for United's benefit, really. And certainly, I would be much more interested in watching the team that had evolved had he left, or the other thing is whoever comes in next and gets the best out of him.
Yeah, but if he'd left, Moyes would have just gone and bought Peter Crouch or Christian Benteke and we'd just be banging it along to them instead.
I'd quite like to see a more sophisticated manager dealing with all the chess pieces in a more interesting way than Moyes, which is like, oh yeah, I know where Rooney plays. That's what I like to do, is I like to put Rooney there in between the tip of the D and the tip of the centre circle. That's where Rooney goes, and everyone else can sort themselves out, sort of thing.
Well, he's certainly got the tools there. He's certainly got the raw ingredients there. He hasn't got the tools. That's the problem, isn't it, with Moyes? He's got the raw ingredients. Again, I'm in this conflicted position in which I have absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Moyes is the right manager for Manchester United, but don't half feel that 6 or 7 months in the job is a very short period of time. But a man who cannot get a team or a squad that contains Kagawa, Mata, Januzaj, Rooney and Van Persie and a whole bunch of other talented players, including Nani, by the way, to play better, more creative, more attacking, more fluent football, is a man who probably isn't ever going to get a team to play in that way, because he can't do it with the ingredients he's got. He's not going to do it with some new players there, and that's the thing that's frustrating me, I suppose.
Are you seriously saying that you haven't properly crossed the tracks to the Moyes outside yet? Are you going to give it until we've been battered by City and Liverpool to finally say, oh no, that's it, we probably are better off replacing him straight away?
Well, luckily I put a KPI on this, didn't I?
You did.
So I don't need to go to the Moyes out camp just yet. Frankly, it's pointless changing the manager now. We'll reassess in the summer and see where we are. It's probably not going to be in a very good position, is it?
I think we should get rid of him this week. I really do, because I think that the damage that's being done to everyone's confidence, to the squad morale. Let's talk about it, right? Because after the Olympiakos game, there's a bunch of fallout. First of all, the players looked absolutely bereft of confidence. People often accuse footballers of not looking like they want it enough, and I think that's often a misguided accusation, to be honest. I think that really they do want it, but sometimes it's not, they haven't got it in them to show that with kind of, Keane-esque fury. But the players looked so flat, and Van Persie completely broke ranks afterwards, saying, well, I'm sure everyone's read the quotes, but other players are playing in my zone and it's a pity. And you think, are you really saying that you just want to kind of amble back towards Carrick and Cleverley with your back to goal? Because that's the only zone I can think he means.
Yes, I don't know whether he's complaining about Rooney coming into his territory on the pitch. I don't know. Look, he's frustrated and he's unhappy. Reports of him being unhappy with training have never gone away, despite some people picking his rather PR-friendly public quotes out as evidence to the contrary. I think that's rather sitting there and hoping, isn't it? So he's clearly not happy. Many of the players aren't. Their body language is terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. They try and talk a good game with the odd victory that comes along. It's not been very many in recent weeks, has it? And in reality, I think their actions are showing far more than any words would. They clearly don't believe in what's happening at the moment, and they're shorn of all confidence as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Carrick sent out to do a post-match interview on ITV and did give a very flat interview, understandably. He looked like, for all the world, he did not want to be standing in front of Gabriel Clark in that moment. After that interview, there was a very interesting moment where Clark asked Carrick, basically, is this all the manager's fault? And Carrick looked at him and said, I can see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to get me to point fingers. Of course, I'm not going to do that. Not wanting to be overly, forensic about the analysis. But actually, if you look at that, that was a very equivocal answer. It was not an unequivocal defence of David Moyes by any stretch of the imagination. If you look at the body language, the eye contact, all that kind of stuff, the hesitation.
Look, let's qualify that analysis, which is perfectly true, of course, by saying that if he'd given a very friendly PR, no, we're all right behind him, he would have had no credibility whatsoever.
I guess not. But just the fact that is the case just goes to show how far away it is from the truth. The idea that everyone's behind David Moyes in that dressing room is clearly nowhere near the case. Then cut to Roy Keane, who flipped out like a ninja on Michael Carrick and basically said that I think that interview was just like the performance, flat. Keane was absolutely incredible value in the post-match there. He looked like a hurt fan. He was passionate, he was frustrated, he was all the things that you would kind of expect Roy Keane of all people to be, having suffered through that. Then Lisa Carrick comes on Twitter, starts beef with Roy Keane. Do not mess with Lisa Carrick, a woman who is prepared to start beef with Roy Keane.
It got ugly. It got very ugly. More quotes from the game. We played well. No, I'm lying. Although, would it have surprised anybody if Moyes had actually said that? So, no, he said the very opposite. And he talked about United doing their absolute best to turn it around. But in reality, this tie's over, isn't it? United have to win by 3 goals at Old Trafford and not concede any. And frankly, that just doesn't look realistic from this point in.
No, absolutely. It could happen. There's been some wonderful nights at Old Trafford in the past, they tell David Moyes.
They have. United turned around a 2-0 defeat against Barcelona many years ago, remember? Famous night, Robbo and all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we could clone the early 90s version of Brian Robson, I might feel a bit more confident about this performance.
Yes, so look, I mean, likelihood is that United will finish trophyless this season and out of the Champions League, maybe or maybe not in the Europa League. There are a few permutations there depending on who wins the domestic cups and exactly where United end up. So 6th or 7th will probably send us into a playoff which comes at the end of July, beginning of August. That will screw up the summer, which is difficult anyway, and it's probably going to be a rubbish transfer market as a result. There's confidence for you, hey?
It's incredible, isn't it? This week we have been linked with all the same players that we're always linked with. A £250,000 a week contract for Tony Cruz. Bayern dismissing this as nonsense. Surely just a story based on the fact that we've just given someone else quite a big contract, right? That seemed to be the whole.
Yes, very fine player, of course, but and he's not paid anywhere near his teammates at Bayern. I'm sure they'll sort it out there financially in very good shape. It wouldn't make any sense for them not to pay him a very large wage because he's worth it, because he's a very fine player.
Manchester United, European football elite official, negotiate a better contract with your existing club partner.
Yeah, very true. Happens all over Europe all of the time, doesn't it? And it will do this summer because, of course, everyone knows that United are desperate.
Gundogan, another one we've been linked with. Oh yeah, let's buy a German midfielder with a really terrible injury record who hasn't played all season. That worked out well last time we did that, didn't it?
Yeah, he's a very good player, Gundogan. The injury record is not good, but he's a young player, and he's he's got a lot of strings to his bow. Good in the tackle, all rounder, passes the ball well, moves the ball well, physically good on the pitch when he's fit. I
mean, the thing is, he'll want to link up again with Klopp, won't he, next season? So that'll work out great.
Hey, look, United's share price has tumbled to the extent that about £400 million been wiped off. Let's just give Borussia, 150 million for Gundogan, Royce, Klopp. Mate, let's get Hummels. We could do with him as well. He'd be a very good buy. Yeah, in fact, why don't we just buy the whole team?
We'd have Subotic, right? We'd definitely have Subotic.
Yeah, he's all right. I think he's not quite as mobile. I of the two, I like Hummels more.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we'll have both. They've played together a lot. The summer's crazy. Mangala, the amount of money that is going to be spent on Mangala.
Can't believe it's by United. I think this is over the top. Porto are doing a very good job of trying to create an auction here.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, being reported that Barcelona, Chelsea, Manchester City and us all in for him. When I say being reported, I mean some journalist wrote that down on a piece of paper and put it in a newspaper. It's like when you read these transfer stories, there is absolutely nothing to any of them. It's insane how they get away with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of it's based on the fact that a scout may have been seen at a match, and United deploy dozens of scouts across Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Guillaume Balaguer saying, United fans cheer up, they're going to spend 200 million in the summer. All right, Guillaume. No.
All right. Yes. No, they're not.
Yeah.
I will happily eat my words if United do something crazy like that, but I don't think it's likely.
So, to talk again about Moyes, you were saying, we'll look at it again in the summer. When you say look at it again in the summer, would your ideal position be that he's replaced in the summer?
I can see what you're trying to do there, Paul. Yeah.
No, I'm asking you, my old and trusted friend, a genuine question. I can see you're trying to
engineer me into joining your Moyes out camp and not go on my fact-based KPI, which was 10 defeats. after the date that I set in the league, which was obviously a crazy KPI. I think I might have to lose every game from here on in order to make that one, but which we could well do. Look, it's a really hard one. Look, he's not even had a season yet. He barely got any support in the summer transfer window. They did a very good piece of business to get Mata in the winter, although we talked endlessly about that. Perhaps not the player they particularly needed right now, but still a brilliant piece of business. So he hasn't been given the tools in which to perform the best possible way. But that said, the brand of football United play is horrible. He comes up with some very strange team selections, some very strange tactics. His approach to the media is odd and bizarre. He's clearly in denial, and it's clear that none of the players support him because you can see it in their body language on the pitch, and they're not performing for him.
Okay, all right. Infer what you want from that, listeners.
But look, you are the master of lists. Give me 6 reasons why Moyes should stay.
I can't. I cannot give you 6 proper good reasons why he should stay.
Give me 3.
All right, yes.
1.5.
Gary Neville says Manchester United stand against the immediacy of modern life, and so they shouldn't sack him. That's not...
It's not quite as pithy as against modern football, but, maybe we can stick that on a T-shirt.
It's mental. This is a club that are sponsored by Aperol Spritz. It's like, it's such a stupid... It's just a stupid thing to say. And he said it a long time ago, but still, earlier in the season.
Yeah, well, no, but he's effectively said to things of the same kind of nature since, I think this is a nice line and nice narrative, but it's based on what? It's based on Ferguson not being sacked 25 years ago when United were in a very, very different position, had much less pressures in terms of having to deliver revenues because they didn't have any, and please sponsors because, again, they didn't have any, and please the stock market weren't listed, and so on. So it's a narrative that makes no sense in modern times.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good reasons are you could argue that a season is not enough for any manager. I think that might be true if you're basing it purely on results. But the whole package, I think he's done such a bad job that it just doesn't quite meet the standard you would need him to meet. Even if we really were battling hard for 4th and narrowly missed out, that would be a very different argument in terms of the give him time sort of approach. Because you say, okay, well, this is where you do operate that bit of leeway. But we are completely, unless the Olympiakos game turns around, the season is done at the beginning of March, and that is just not acceptable. It is, the KPI of losing 10 league games from December onwards, or whatever it was. I mean, I think you could almost extend the Fulham and Arsenal games. They were draws, but in terms of what credit they put in the David Moyes column, they were losses, and we've been so bad in the cups that I feel like that should count against them a little bit as well. But anyway.
No, they're all fair points. We will obviously discuss this probably every week until Moyes gets the boot, which whatever the betting says, the noise coming out of United is that they're sticking with him. And so I'm happy to get off the fence and say there's no chance that Moyes is going to get sacked before the end of the season. There may well be a review of the season, and they may still come to the conclusion that he hasn't been given the tools that he needs in order to perform the best. Ferguson is, after all, still a non-executive director. He will have some kind of say here.
Yeah, and having gone back recently and looked at all the marketing and stuff around his arrival, the club are going to look idiotic if they sack him, because everything in the documentation, everything in the press releases, Sir Alex on the pitch, the whole works. It was all about this is an appointment for the long term, not the short term. And if you sack your long term appointment after 7 months, you look really, really stupid. Somebody quoting on Twitter today, quoting the thick of it quote, where it's like, if you sack him now, it looks like you're an idiot. If you sack him next season, it looks like he's an idiot.
I thought you were going to give me the one Tinker Tailor Soldier Cat. That was my favourite.
No, that was not really in my vocabulary.
Maybe we should get a troubleshooter in. We could do with a bit of the thick of it style berating in the dressing room, couldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, Roy Keane was 100 yards away from the dressing room at half time. Absolutely wasted not being in there screaming at everyone, although being terrified to their very core might not have helped them all that much in the second half of that game. Although they couldn't have been much worse. I mean, God, it was awful, wasn't it? That's Olympiakos. That's not Barcelona.
No, this is a team that sold their best player to Fulham. This is a team at best mid-ranked Premier League standard. And look, true, they they're absolutely walking the Greek Super League, but there isn't a lot of competition there. It's a poor standard of league by all accounts, and they won a couple of games against Benfica and Anderlecht to get through, which was a good performance for them. They got absolutely spanked by PSG. I think we can rank them sort of mid Premier League standard. That might be generous, and unfortunately United are mid Premier League standard too.
That might be generous. All right, shall we do some Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
Farhan_Ahmed says, can someone please hold me and tell me everything's going to be okay? It's only football, Farhan. Everything's going to be okay. Not Manchester United. We're completely, we're in real trouble, but yeah.
Did you almost swear there, Paul?
No, I was going to say finished, but then that seemed like ridiculously harsh, because there's every chance we'll bounce back from this. @Anjali_X friend of the Rantcast says, would you rather have a new squad in the summer or a new manager in the summer?
Oh dear. Yeah, well, it's a lot cheaper to sack the manager.
A very diplomatic answer, Ed. I would rather have a new manager. You'd be amazed to hear. @Bifurcated_MUFC says, is it possible that the people behind the Premier League conspiracy against us are the same ones behind the Champions League one? Yes. Again, not something we talked about on the last show because it's happened since, but...
Do you think the Gluminati are working against us now rather than for us?
I think that seems to be what's going on. David Moyes certainly thinks that's what's going on, because in the pre-Crystal Palace Friday press conference, the final question he was asked was about what a competitive Premier League season it was this season, and he looked wryly and said, well, I think the Premier League have got exactly what they wanted this season.
I know. He then walked back into his house, put the tinfoil back on his head, attached the aerials and waited for the Martians to turn up.
@Ahmed Kasim says, one shot on target in the 89th minute. Can we still pretend we're doing the right thing? It's not working, is it?
I was just assuming that's a rhetorical question.
@Jaffo says, which player do you keep forgetting is on our books? He says that the correct answer is Nick Powell, but not for me. For me, it's Angelo Henriquez. Forgot all about him until the other day.
I'd like to forget about Wayne Rooney, but unfortunately he's there all of the time.
He is indeed. He's a world-class player, don't you know?
I don't know, no, but they tell me this, yes.
@Kostadin Stoilov comes up with an imaginative Moyes out angle. Do you think it's now time for the board to sack David Moyes just to reassure the players that they haven't lost it?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting take on the situation. Yeah, look, the focus is on Moyes, but the players do take some responsibility here because their performances have dropped hugely. Now, the cause of that may well be Moyes.
It is Moyes.
May well be Moyes. But and the fact that the players are not playing for him. But there's some complacency here, for sure. I'm not going to accept an argument that says that there's not an edge of complacency. They've lost something. And because of that, I don't know whether a new manager would help inspire that again. Might do. It might be that some players know they're going and they've lost the edge, and it's going to have to be a busier summer than normal.
The players that know they're going, Vidic, maybe Ferdinand. I mean, Vidic has had a few bad games, but he's also had some pretty decent games this season. Ferdinand just looks physically gone. Evra, I don't know. Yeah, there was that example you cited against Arsenal, but he also does work very hard a lot of the time
fun
too.
Getting against Palace.
Yeah. So who are the players that are complacent? Well, Carrick has had an awful season. Are we saying that we think he's off in the summer?
No.
Right, so that's a kind of complacency of a different nature, I guess.
He's lost some edge, but yeah, no, I'm not attributing complacency entirely to players off in the summer. That's one factor. I mean, the fact is they have lost an edge. Some of that is Moyes, some of that might be other factors. Change, don't feel the hunger anymore. Who knows?
No, absolutely. KNE Kill. Oh, his name's Nikhil, so that helps. Is it still hard to believe it's not Scholes? Never was that hard to believe it wasn't Scholes, but I'm still a believer in the Michael Carrick is a good footballer argument. One bad season, well, another bad season doesn't add that up.
To add to the few others, yeah.
Yeah, he's had a few, but he's also had some wonderful seasons, hasn't he?
Yeah, so I thought his last two seasons were great. He's not having a good season.
No.
But who is?
Do you think Lisa Carrick would do a better job in midfield than her husband? Asked J_Murray12. Certainly shows more aggression. Dave Little 81 with a very similar question. She's apparently not cup-tied in Europe, so get her in for the second leg. As I said earlier, look, she's prepared to take on Roy Keane. That is a person who's completely fearless. Kind of feel like Michael Carrick is now going to get beaten up in an alley by Roy Keane as retribution for that.
Mysterious accident. Yeah, mind you, it's all very well being brave when you're a keyboard warrior, isn't it? She's just a troll.
Yeah, absolutely. At EWHK70, friend of the Rantcast, Eugene Wong says, how silly does that Chosen One banner look now? I would say it looks approximately as silly as it did when it was unveiled.
Yeah, it was a horrible banner, and it's kind of embarrassing now. Yeah.
The thing is, they got a real problem, right? Because they can't take it down. Because imagine how terrible that would look.
Yes, that'd be like smoke signals coming from the Vatican, right?
Yeah, Stretford End Flags do not approve of the manager. They're replacing him. Talking of which, at RHNMHDV says, will Wayne Rooney appoint Jurgen Klopp as United manager?
I'm not sure Wayne Rooney could say Jurgen Klopp.
Jurgen Klopp.
Exactly.
At Ewan Lenhart says, realistically, what's it going to take for Moyes to get sacked before the season is over? We know this. 10 league defeats.
Yeah, well, after December, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so another 7. I counted them up the other day. It's 7 more league defeats.
So so we have 11 league games left, is that correct? Another 7 defeats and he gets the sack. There you go, that's my KPI. So all you guys who'd like me to change my mind out there, you better be supporting the opposition. Kind of weird, but, hey.
It's Not Skulls says, the club haven't sacked a manager for 9,974 days. Do you think they remember how?
Good question. Well, it might be one of these kind of Mayan prophecies. Maybe on 10,000 days he gets the boot.
Oh, yes. So, a couple of weeks, lads. At Matt Lewis 6 says, when will all this end? Don't worry, it's not that bad. It really is not that bad. At Snetty says, if United finish outside the top 4 and David Moyes doesn't get the sack, is that his greatest ever achievement in football?
Oh, well, it'd be a pretty good one, yeah. I mean, look, he's achieved between 4th and 8th most seasons at Everton, so he's on par.
At Paul Gunning 1 says, is it worth daubing Terrar Moisey on a bedsheet and signing Mark Robbins in an attempt to turn things around?
That would be desperate, but I suppose desperate measures are needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Question about Moyes losing the dressing room. I guess we've covered that one, really.
Someone told him where the dressing room is, so he's all right there.
At Those Boys in Red says, where is Nani? He's injured, I believe.
Injured, yes. He's got a groin problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Why, the same person asks, why did Moyes not stick with the same team and swap Mata with Kagawa yesterday? Doesn't rate Kagawa.
Yep, he simply doesn't. He's barely featured at all. I think the biggest shock was the fact that Januzaj wasn't even in the squad, and we've talked about this again. Yeah, it didn't half give the impression that Moyes doesn't trust flair players.
I mean, absolutely. And the fact that we spent 10 minutes knocking the ball between our defenders in that game in the first 10 minutes, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Andy Townsend said something quite insightful. Seriously, that was a thing that happened. That's how bad it's got. But he pointed out, he sort of said that in trying to kind of quieten down the crowd and take the sting out of the tie, which is very clearly what they were trying to do, they ended up just taking the sting out of themselves. They lost all impetus. I thought that was...
right. No, that's fair enough. And of course, one of the biggest pass combinations of the evening was David De Gea to Robin van Persie.
Oof. At Hennessy82, Moyes gets sacked and you take over. What's first on your to-do list?
Hire a decent manager.
No, you are the manager. Woodward rings you up and says, Ed, I've listened to the Rantcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see. Right.
Hire a decent manager.
Right, assuming you're not allowed to do that, assuming you have to keep the job for the year in order to protect your family's safety.
Nice. That's not the way to get the best out of people. Didn't you know that fear does not inspire the best performances? All
right. You're going to be phenomenally well remunerated.
D. Moyes, I'd buy a very good central midfielder. There you go. First option.
I think...
No, I'd take them all to Butlins for a weekend.
I might have to just give Danny Welbeck the captaincy. I think that might be the first thing I do. Might sell Rooney and give Danny Welbeck the captaincy. At 987_Sean says, when do I stop laughing and start worrying? Never, Sean. If you can't laugh at this, what is the point?
Yeah, it's they talk about the 5 stages of loss. We've gone through all of them this season. Anger, denial, a lot of denial going on.
Yeah, there's definitely a significant element of people that have not got through that stage yet.
Bargaining, right?
Yeah, if we offer Wayne Rooney
£300,000 a week for Wayne Rooney, there's definitely some bargaining going on. Depression, I'm frequently feeling depressed, and acceptance, and that's the gallows humour that we've got now.
Yeah, absolutely. The season's effectively over. I mean, I'm not totally prepared to write off all potential chances of us coming back against Olympiakos, but they look like a team that could get a goal on the break to me.
Yes, I think a lot of it will depend on United's attitude and Olympiakos' attitude. If they come to try and defend, then I think it's going to hand United the impetus in the way that Olympiakos had the impetus on Tuesday night, right? So, if I was them, I'd think that United there for the taking and go for it with an attacking formation and go and try and attack United, or at least set up in a way that they can break very quickly, and which they will do, of course. They've got some speedy players in there, haven't they? Including an Arsenal reserve who scored an absolute blinding goal. Yeah, who
scored a wonder goal. Yeah. Hernan Perez looked good as well. So they definitely got some threats. And it is worth saying, both Olympiakos' goals were absolutely magic. That first goal, that moment of improvisation, that is proper football genius, that was.
Two very, very fine goals and a fine performance. Are we becoming Olympiakos fans here?
No, my goodness. So no game before we record the next podcast. We'll do another one next week, preview the West Brom game and talk about the big news of the week.
Hashtag Moyes out.
Yeah, fingers crossed there'll be some pretty big news. I don't know. It is certainly not in my nature to wish the sack on a human being, but he'd be fine if he got sacked. He would get a job appropriate to his level. He'd be a very wealthy man. He already is a very wealthy man, so no worries on that score. A huge amount of dented pride, I'm sure, but keeping him in the job is not going to help him save face. He's just going to lose more and more face because he's not going to be able to turn it round. And I sincerely hope that I massively regret saying all these things in 15 years' time when he's established himself as one of the greats of the game. I just can't see more than a tiny sliver of a chance of that happening.
Well, quite. If Moyes turns out to be a triple European Cup winner later in life, I will play this podcast back again and eat my words.
Because I know really you're Moyes out in summer, aren't you, Ed? That's
oh dear. Yes, I'm currently on the something like the 12th floor of my hotel in Barcelona, where I still am, trying to convince Messi to come to United. He's thinking about it. But any more of that, no, I'm mainly going to throw myself out of the window.
Try not to watch United again while you're up there. That's probably a pretty good piece of advice.
Quite easy as well, because United do not have another game until the 8th of March when we play West Brom. We'll preview that one next week when we'll be filling out the podcast with lots of rambling nonsense, I suspect.
Yeah, as opposed to our normal, incredibly kind of concise, insightful opinion on football tactics and the like. If you want to get hold of us in the meantime, you can get me at UTD Rantcast, you can get Ed at United Rant. On Twitter, you can get us both at facebook.com/United Rant or the show page at unitedrant.co.uk. If you want to read what Ed's got to say in the written word, go to unitedrant.co.uk and you can read my stuff on a Bleacher Report. Also, if you want to help us with bandwidth and equipment costs and stuff like that for the show, that would be really much appreciated at unitedrant.co.uk/donate.
Very good, and we'll see you next week, and we'll play out with this.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles Mackenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.